let me take just a few minutes and give you a brief breakdown. Sno-Isle Genealogy is a totally all volunteer, not for profit, dedicated to helping people with their family history search. We are based out of Humble House, which is just on the other side of the parking lot here in Heritage Park in Linwood. And we really enjoy people having you here. Most of our content is available for member and non-member alike. If you do find this valuable and are interested, membership is an annual $25. We've got lots of meetings. We've got our library. We've got some other things coming online. And more than anything, we're helping one another on our journey to learn more about how to do things and discover exciting things. So it's I really appreciate that. I don't recall if we knew, I think we knew, but just in case, we did get our supportive grant from the Washington State Genealogical Society. That's a matching grant of $250. And we're going to continue to try to upgrade some of our hybrid meeting technology so that there's a little better interaction between the people out there on Zoom and the people in here. So if it seems a little awkward at the moment, keep coming back. Hopefully over the course of the year, things will seem a little less awkward. So appreciate it. Remind everybody we have Zoom Coffee Clutch every Monday morning. We've got our third Wednesday of the month, our tool shed, which is dedicated to software and techniques. We've got a couple of things coming up in which we're doing some community outreach. We'll be back here with our friends in the Northwest Veterans Museum, we hope. We've got a couple, we got somebody here, and we're gonna do that hopefully on Veterans Day. So keep your ears and eyes open for that. On the 28th, I'm going to be doing a presentation about getting started here at Destinations Linwood. And then December 1st is Cookies with Santa, which is hosted by the Linwood Alderwood Manor Heritage Association, but we'll be here helping people get ready. So get those on your calendar. And again, you can always go out and see everything that's going on at snoislegenealogy.org. All righty. Well, let's go ahead and get going. We're going to be talking all things photographic restoration. Christopher Summit is here, has been involved in restorations and such for a number of years. The Custer
Battlefield National Monument.
There you go. It's a mouthful. Locally, the Mukilteo Historical Society, and also working with the Boeing tour deal. So great stuff. So Christopher, I'm going to hand it over to you. Thank you.
Let me begin by saying that I am doing photo retouching and restoration at a very minimalist level. You see, I'm not tech savvy, not very well. We noticed. I have difficulties with my hands, and these issues make it complicated, an already complicated thing. Also, I tend to still look at a computer as if it were a glorified typewriter. So there are software solutions, I am sure, like with ChatGPT, that could probably do these things a lot simpler. But I'm using the very simple techniques that I've found are useful. Both how to acquire an image and keeping in mind what are you wanting that image for, preservation or publication. So I'm going to now share screen. And I'll begin the PowerPoint. I'm going to, there we go. Can everyone see that on Zoom? Yeah. Very good. I'm going to, at the end of the presentation, break away and actually do some actual retouching of an image. Several of them to show you the kinds of issues that you will have when you've got historic pictures. I pulled this particular image off the internet because it's a very good demonstration of what potentially can be done with color. But even with this image, there are issues that come with the way that we store our pictures. First of all, historic pictures, especially of our families, have such meaning for us. For a long time, I thought this image of my own family in the early 1900s in southern Indiana, I thought this was all that I had. I didn't have the original, and the people who had the originals tended to die off, and we weren't sure where their collections went. So these pictures are based on what my father literally took a photograph of a large format picture. You have an issue?
Your screen, the screen didn't change.
So I think you're sharing the PowerPoint, but not the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, how do I
So stop sharing
stop sharing?
and then go to share screen.
Okay. Let's see, get Zoom here. Pardon us, folks. Now, share screen.
Yep.
And window, and it's that. You want me to try it again?
If he keeps
I think
choosing
it's-
window, if he
No, it's this one.
switches
It's
back
that
and
one?
forth, he's gonna lose.
Yeah.
So it's not going to take PowerPoint?
No, it will, but you're moving from window to window. You want to share the entire screen. So
That's
that
what
you-
he's doing.
I put it to full
You
screen,
chose window.
window, and I hit it on full screen. Does
So
that
what do
change
you
anything?
see?
Okay, so that's showing, but
Okay, so if you, next time you swap, just make sure it moves. I have
Okay,
a feeling it's not taking the slideshow because the slideshow needs to be started before we share the screen.
all right.
okay, we'll make do.
All right, is it, are you seeing this?
I am seeing it.
Very good. So those two pictures, I thought my father's pictures of them taken back in the early 1990s were the only pictures of them that have survived. I'm happy to say recently I found the originals in the boxes of material that were sent to us, plus many other pictures. That's where I started to set myself to preserving them. I got started in older photography with this at Custer Battlefield National Monument back in the 1980s. Custer Battlefield is where Custer had his last stand. That's it. In the collection they had was actually Custer's widow, Mrs. Custer, had her photograph and document collection that she had donated for a future visitor center. And among those pictures is an example of the kinds of problems you're going to have. What you see there is a small picture. Everything okay?
No. Okay, so one second, everyone. So I need you to stop sharing again. I need you to go to your PowerPoint.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, so is that your
Is it
present?
showing?
Is
This
your
is the presentation.
Okay,
Yeah.
so now go back to share screen.
This one.
That one. We want the slideshow. So perfect.
All
Now we
right.
Should be good to go.
Now we should be okay. These are the issues that come with modern technology. As I told to one of our guests earlier, I work at Boeing. My cell phone fails, it only falls 3 feet. If jet software fails, you've got a lot further to go. But getting back to this issue, this photograph, I have handled the original. It's a tiny tintype. It's about the width of your hand in size. You notice the brass frame around it. You notice how the brass over the years has oxidized the area of the tintype. That image is not on paper, it's on tin that has a coating of silver nitrate that's what responds. If you look closely, you see the material has flaked off over the years, tiny pinpricks There is software, if you get a high resolution scan, one that's really close and detailed of that image, you can restore by removing those little dots. That's what I was able to do with the face portion of it. You see on the outsides of the face where how small some of those little chips in the tin are. I was able to take information around each of those dots and use that information to restore it. I got to where I could tell the difference between a damage on the tin and a freckle on the man's face. This is Custer just after he was made Brigadier General, 1863 in April. I raise again the issue, what are you acquiring and saving the images for? I have here two examples from the Mukilteo Historical Society. We have the old burner at Crown Lumber. This was probably taken in the 1920s. The photographer's name was Young, and we know his great documentary pictures because he used white ink on his pictures. Now, if I were going to be using this in a book, I would do restoration. I'd crop it, I would remove the dots, and I would also remove the white lettering. I will demonstrate at the end of the presentation how that is done. The other picture is typical of the Polaroids that we were used to. Remember how with the little black and white ones, they wanted you to coat it with a lacquer? What they didn't realize is that over 50 years, that lacquer turns yellow and dark. So there are things you have to do to restore it. They used to have a clear sticker you'd put on a color one like this, but even with color, that's after it's been restored. The original color fades. The color that makes up the image is made of dyes. And over the years, chemically, those dyes slightly change color. That's why you'll have an image with magenta in it. Here's examples of other pictures. The one on the left there is Bela Lugosi at his house in the 1930s feeding his dogs. Somebody in a box camera took a picture of him. It's faded, but I can restore the contrast and lighten the image, and that even reveals details you couldn't see in the original. The one in the middle, that's my father. It's a 35 millimeter slide that I arranged to have specially scanned, a high resolution scan. There are companies that do this, and they provide you with a large format file that you can do further work on. The change of color is because this was not a Kodak slide. You had other people, third-party groups that may have been licensed, may have been not, but they could develop your slides, but their process perhaps used chemicals that didn't stay stable over the years. This has a magenta hue to it because green or blue had become some other color. So there is software that can restore that. The one on the end is actually about 1.5 inches by 3 inches. It's a very small picture. You can scan it in high resolution, and you can remove the scratches. I'll show you how that's done. You can bring out contrast or lighten the contrast to where you can find details you didn't notice before. The information's there. Now here we're going to talk about acquiring, getting your image. The easiest for most of us, everybody recognize an all-in-one printer? We all have printers of some kind. Many of them, especially those called all-in-ones, they have a scanner, a flatbed scanner. That's what that is. You just use the software there, you acquire the picture. Let's say you lay multiple 3x5 or 4x6 prints on the scanner, scan them one at a time, and then you can label them. What's wonderful about a digital picture is that you can write information about the picture, your memories about what had happened, using that picture. Not to mention that when you put it on a big screen, you can zoom in on all sorts of background details that you never, let's say you'd forgotten, like what cartons of milk that you drank as a kid. All those little details that fill out and bring back to us our memories of what that time was like. If you have large items, big 14 by 8 legal documents, books, document scanners can be had from $200 to $300. They can turn a book into a PDF. The software today allows that book, you know how when you open the book, there's the pillowing curve. They have software that will straighten it without distorting the image or distorting it very much. And they go quite quickly. You just turn the pages, click, turn the page, click, turn the page, click, and then work out how bright or dark you want that particular image to be. But pictures, photographs. Now, Brenda has brought to us here an example of the kind of large format photographs that we all have. Let me make sure I got a good grip on this. Now, a picture like this, I have some that are like this, but without the clear, either glass or plastic that's on the front of it. This is hard to photograph because you have reflections. But there are ways, depending on where you put your lighting, to make that image possible to be scanned. Let's roll the wind. The easiest for all of us, cell phones. I am surprised how beautifully today's technology allows you to take a high quality image, even what's called macro photography, where you're very close to something. As long as you have something to steady your hand, it works very well. Good enough for our purposes, for the ordinary person to get a picture. But I'll show you what happens when you use a camera. It's the same issue I have with this projected screen. Because the surface is not even, you notice how one side digs in. It's because of the angle and the bend in the screen itself. Let's start with a flatbed scanner. I take an image like this, you wipe down the glass, and you be very careful because you notice the metal frame. I don't want to scratch my flatbed scanner, so I gently lower it onto it. Notice on the left, I have got a label there on tape that says top. In other words, put the image with the head that way. Otherwise, it'll scan it upside down. And then you have to do extra work to turn it around. But you can get very good results. And if you're used to using that scanner, you can make it for a very large, high-resolution image or a very simple one. Like if you were going to send it to somebody, you want a small file for the attachment on the email. That's how I use that document scanner. You notice this is a photograph much like this other one that Brenda has for us to see. Notice the shape. It's the same curve, the same style. That's my grandfather in the early 1900s. Now that picture has been damaged, possibly in the process of removing it from the frame. That's why if you're going to clean an image like this, to clean the glass, there is a flaw on the man's chin. Digitally, I can remove that, but it's not on the picture itself. I think it is something that is on the back side of the glass, something that had flaked off from up here. Now, let me gently put this back down. Again, you have to really be gentle with these older ones. But a cell phone camera, I especially love the 3-gun versions they have because it gives you so many options. A square format, a long format, an extra wide format. They even let you do panoramas where it stitches an image together. Before I had a cell phone, I would have to stitch together different parts of a really big picture that I took with a flatbed scanner. And that was a lot of work, but it's easier today. But if I just walk up and quickly take that picture, you notice the top is wide and the bottom is not. Let me hide that white thing down here. There we go. Looks narrow at the end. That's because I haven't centered it on the cell phone image as I should. You take time to make sure all the corners line up with the same size. So this is better. And there are things you can do, especially in a really sophisticated Photoshop program, that can adjust it even more exactly. But I have this on a piece of cardboard. If you have something really big, this is on a piece of butcher paper. This was my history project when I was in the 7th grade in 1973, the fall of the Alamo. 3.5 by 3 feet. Big. It's badly wrinkled. I had it folded up for years. The tape, the colors have changed slightly. To get that picture, I went out to in front of the garage where our archive is, and I have a big piece of cardboard and I tacked it to it. And that's how I got this picture. Now, I can remove those tacks, the image of those tacks, the same way I remove a scratch or dust. You can remove the tacks. In fact, on the document scanner, you can even have yellow finger cots to help you hold a page open. And when the software sees the yellow on your fingertips, it blanks out your hand. You don't have to do the extra work. You don't want people seeing people's fingers holding the page down. But that's what you do with large format. We're coming to the end of the PowerPoint. I wanted to point out for the actual work of retouching, you have two options. One is expensive and a little more complicated. The other is very simple. Adobe Photoshop, you can get with an Adobe subscription nowadays, and they will keep you updated. An update is like a virus that the customer gives you. You can't get away from them. Adobe Photoshop gives you so many options, especially when it comes to things like color. Now, I use Photoshop frequently, but my daughter, she uses it all the time. She knows more about how to tweak an image than I do, which, hits my pride a little bit. But when I have to consult, I ask her. Adobe Photoshop is the professional grade software for cleaning up an image. However, for those of us who are computer challenged, who don't have the modern generation's intuitiveness for software, Microsoft Microsoft Photos. If you have Windows from about Windows 98 onward, you have this. If you open a picture, if it's not in Paint, it usually is done by Microsoft Photos. That's the easiest software to use. Now this is the end of the PowerPoint, and then I'm actually going to share screen as I actually restore this particular picture. As I said, this one I brought from looking on the internet. Just simply a picture showing photo restoration. But I noticed something they forgot to restore. This illustrates what's possible, even in a one-button move. How you can restore a color that's faded, the contrast that is washed out. But there's something that they overlooked. You notice on her cheek and on her dress near the rose, there are some smudges. Those smudges came about for something that we all live with. Our old pictures are stacked together, bundled, been sitting there for years. If you wrote on the back of the picture in ink the names of who's in the picture, which you need. Remember, when you scan these things, also scan the back. Have the first image is A, the second image is B in your titles. So you can tell it's the back side, because you need that information. But it can leave an ink blotch in the wrong place. Now, I am going to stop sharing here. I can close the PowerPoint here. And let me share screen. And let me grab, all right, this one. That's the actual picture I need. I'll hide that. This is in Microsoft Photos. With my mouse, I can zoom in and actually look at those flaws here, here, and here. Can everybody see my hand moving? And there you see These are things that are on the surface, and the scanning actually distorted them slightly. So what I do is I go over here to, at the top corner, that's where it is now, edit. It analyzes the image. And what I would go to would be adjust. And in this case, over here is an icon, erase. What erase gives me, you see that on the screen, that circle? I can make that circle smaller simply by bringing it in like that. And then I bring it in, and let's go to this blotch here. I surround it, I give enough room, a good border on each side, and I click on it. It's using an automatic system to sample what's around that dot, and look, it's removed it. You can also drag the dot like that. It's thinking, gone, just like that. Again, this is simple. Remember, Microsoft Photos. Let's go down here. I'm going to erase this. Now I got into the rows. Let's see what that does. Sometimes it distorts. It's thinking. No, it was smart enough to reproduce most of that pattern. Photoshop would do it even better. It would recognize that there is a pattern on that dress. But that's how you do it in a simple way. I can also, let me take a different one here. I'm going to cancel.
Can I ask you?
Yes.
When you put the circle around it to erase it,
Mhm.
it doesn't end up with the white background. It does end up with
What it takes image around, both in the circle and immediately around it.
Oh.
On Photoshop, you can actually have that where it will has a certain thickness around it in case you're having to do a really precise work, especially if it's a dot or damage to the picture around the eyes. I've even gone to the point of copying one eye on one side, reversing it, and sticking it on the other one because the other one was so damaged. Again, you get creative with this kind of thing.
You
Now,
can also use it on writing if somebody's written.
yes, that's what I'm going to show next. Let me close this one. Now I'm going to, let me see, for this, I'm going to have to.
So could you make her cross-eyed?
You could, this is where, yes, actually, when I bring it up here, let me try and find my, there it is. Let me get an example. Let me use my dad. And I think once I have this up, I can go to several of them. Now let me go back to share screen, close that, and I will share screen, window. Let me first get this so it recognizes it's up. There it is. Whoop, it took it away. So let me do that. It has to be up, it looks like, when I'm doing this. So edge, and there it is. I'll share that. Now, can everyone see that? Very good. Once again, I go to the upper corner to edit. I go to adjust. The first thing I would do with a picture like this, that's me as a child at our farm at Auburn. That's my father, the Boeing engineer. I'm going to go to these scales here on the right, and I'm going to reduce the brightness just slightly. Each of these tweak images in a different way. Contrast is good for bringing out the shadows. If you got a really bright background, highlight helps diminish that. Shadows also increase your black image. Now I'm going to go to erase. Once again, my brush size, I'm going to actually hit the big things first, like this. It's thinking. My computer's not as fast as it could be. That's why it's taken a while. and most of it's gone. Now, now here's what you were talking about. Can you make a person cross-eyed? My dad had a mole just above his eye. You can see it right here. This over here is damage on the picture. So let me reduce the size of this. I can remove that. It's thinking, and it's gone. Here's an ethical question. Do you want posterity to remember your dad with a mole? On this particular picture, I can remove that. I can be like a plastic surgeon. The temptation to cheat with your family images is strong. There, it's gone. So it's not a distraction, let's say. Oh, that's a lovely mole you've got.
Can you bring that back up then?
Hmm?
Reverse it?
You can't, what you do, this is a very good question. You take your scan and the copy that you have altered and retouched, you save that as a copy. So you always keep the original in its original state. That's the preservation part of it. So people, maybe a future technology could do even more with the image than you could. But very quickly, okay, remember how it looks there. If I cancel the operation, there you see back to what it was. Now let me go to the next one here. That's again at our farm at Auburn. I hit edit. And let me go to, first thing I usually do is adjust your grayscale, your contrast, because that helps bring out the color. This is a Polaroid. I remember doing this mom's big organic garden she had in the background there. Yep, we had 3.5 acres and mom practiced organic gardening. And I can change the hue, sharpness, artificial sharpness. I've not had good luck with it. There may be new software solutions for it, but for example, this was an overcast day. I could bring back some of the warmth of the day like that. Again, with the lights here, the image here doesn't look as clean as it does on my laptop. And those would be distortions from the projector taking the image and putting it up there. That's why that's a lot brighter in contrast. Notice the cauliflower is very bright. Now, if I were to artificially bring it down by exposure, notice the effect. But I will cancel that operation. And let me try a different one here. All these little scratches here. That's me picking my nose up by the fireplace. Dad got me. This is about 1965. But I can remove these dots. This was a Polaroid. Like I said, as you zoom in on things, you can see so much. The blocks of my play school block set, the old furniture I used to love. That clock is still there, or else it's up elsewhere, but let's see here. Now, a picture like this, there's not much at my level that I can do with that. I can reduce how the glare is on that image. There are things like ChatGPT that can take that image and possibly improve on it, but I've never tried that. I'm a little tempted by what ChatGPT could do.
I have a question on,
Yes.
On dealing with, this one's a little tough, but other ones, like the one before with the cabbages or cauliflower. When I've tried doing some of these things, I feel like contrast, tint, color saturation, it gives the appearance of being a science, but in the end, it looks like you are moving things around. There's a real balance.
Yes.
And is that more correct?
You're making it more like what it looked through the camera. It's getting it, especially the joy of this is to take a damaged image or something where the color has changed and make it look like it did when it was new. And in some cases, improve on that. There are people, companies, who will do high resolution scans of your old color negatives. And either they can do it or you can do it. You can take that high resolution scan, reverse the colors from the negative, and you'll have a better quality than the various printing people that first printed it out for you. It is possible.
And I guess what I was getting to is, as you move those individual pieces, you have to be, it seems like, and I have not done very much of this, but you really have to kind of play with things. Oh, this is looking great. And then you go move the tint, and all of a sudden you got,
It throws other things off.
So you give and taketh in different sliders.
Let me give an example of what Microsoft Photos can do with color. Let me go back to edit again. There are other tabs up here. That's erase. Let's see, this one is that's markup. I don't want that. That's, I think, for removing backgrounds, or tab. Filters. Look over here to the right. If I put that in, if you want more blue in the image, that's what it looks like. And you can even adjust it somewhat by this bar at the bottom. I like to take what they call calm and reduce like so. You notice how it is cutting down the glare. Again, I'm seeing it perfectly on the monitor, whereas those in the live audience are seeing after it's been projected. So it's a very different hue to it. And you can always go back to the original. But that's, again, you have options. And let me,
Auto, where it tries to analyze the color.
it can, like auto enhance, that's the solution it comes up with. Now, as I look at it, I don't like it. Now, let me use the bar on that. That brings out more of the detail because it's cut down on the glare. That actually is a very good. But always watch out for auto enhance, because it's what the computer thinks it is. It doesn't know that's a person there. It just knows patterns. To a degree, the software will recognize some patterns, but it also comes up with really weird stuff. So let me cancel this and go to now. The next thing I'm going to share is actually Photoshop. Now for that, I'm going to, well, let me do it a different way here. Oops. Again, my fingers tend to jump and jerk. Let's see. I'm going to open it from samples. And where is there it is. I'm going to open this with Photoshop. It should, yes, it comes up. Now I can share screen. And window, there it is. I will share that. Now, can everybody see that? This is the screen for Adobe Photoshop. Let me hit zoom here. Whoops, it's going the other way. Zoom out, zoom in. You can see there are little patches. For those, you just like the other one, except this works quicker. I can use this healing brush, they call it. You see it on the screen, that little circle? That quickly is how it disappears. That's not part of the chip, but you can use this quite quickly. That's what I did that picture of Custer, was with a setup like this. But there is another way. I told you how we use, let me grab where's the hand? Let me try H. Yeah. I'm going to work on this, removing that lettering. And to do that, let me zoom in a little more. hand, big enough that I can really see the image. And that's where I use our healing brush. And let me make that smaller, because then I can control the results. That's too small, about so. And let me start with one that's simple, like that, like that. Now, sometimes it'll get fooled and it'll reproduce, it'll grab from over here and add some white where there didn't need to be. But you can remove that, that. That's actually a mark on my screen. But you see how quickly I can remove it. As I said, there are few things as satisfying as seeing what a picture that has been in books, has been in newspapers and magazine articles, to see what it actually looks like before Mr. Young wanted everybody to make sure that nobody took his picture for a postcard without paying him. It's largely why they did it. We don't know whatever became of his original negatives. They used to be at the old Chalacoman Fish funeral home, and then they disappeared at some point when that place went under. But just in the amount of time we've been talking here, again, look how swiftly I can do it. When I'm done, I'm going to zoom out. I'm not as adept as I used to be because my hands don't work the way I want them to anymore. And now let me zoom out. When I can get the rest of the word done, but you see that other half of the word's gone. You're seeing this without the distraction of the handwriting.
And are you saying that that would have done, if that was ink that bled through from the backside?
In that, now this was probably on the original negative, not on the print. Again, he wanted to make sure that every time it was reproduced, his name was on it. Some people would use a stamp after it's been printed. But in his case, every example I've seen, it's had the same signature. So I'm assuming, as a photographer, he just used white ink and put it there. But that shows you what's possible. That is the Photoshop, Adobe Photoshop. I will not.
Can I ask a question, real quick question?
Okay.
So there's a line going from top to bottom, right? Now, that's probably a fold, or
That is probably on the negative.
Oh, okay,
And that can be removed.
the same way.
Yeah. I just make this bigger. Not too big because you don't know what you're going to bring in, but
Yeah, because as you were doing, as it was, yeah.
and if I do this right, it should reproduce that shoreline. It did.
Nice. And then this would also work, we're looking at this where it's handwritten, but 70s and 80s, you started getting the date. The camera would.
You can do exactly the same thing.
Be able to do that.
Now let's see what happens if I try to, in one stroke. Let me see, that big enough? No, let me make it bigger. In one stroke, it's drawing around it there. I did it in one stroke. Sometimes it plays havoc with the water and other images. This is pretty simple. If I had a busy scene like a painting that had been damaged, one of my delights when I like listening to audiobooks or listening to things on YouTube, I take, let's say, an ancient icon, and I've get a scanned image of it, and I can remove the cracks and I can restore it to something like it was 500 years ago when it was first painted. Digitally, you can do this. There's a beautiful image of Christ Pantocrator at Daphne in Greece, where he's raising his hand in blessing. It's a mosaic. Part of it has fallen away. but I can reproduce all the stuff around it. I've looked at other paintings like that at the same period, and I know what the artist was trying to do. And I could make a restored copy, what it would have looked to the people in the church looking up at that dome ceiling. Again, this software allows you all sorts of options. Photoshop is harder. I've never had somebody to show me it other than my daughter. You have a question?
Well, no, I was just a comment on that tool though. One of the things, if you have like things that are straight lines, it helps to sometimes zigzag when you draw a thing, because our eyes are very good at picking out a straight line. When it's healing that, if you do it as a zigzag, it makes it less noticeable that you removed.
A lot too depends on the information that's there.
Yes, around.
Again, it can see, okay, there are contrast here versus contrast there, and it seems to try to make that the same. I will have to try that. I've not tried that. I know sometimes just because my hand shakes,
Well,
that
that's where it can be a good thing. Then.
yeah. And sometimes like I said, it can draw information that you don't want. Because
I've done that where you do the handwriting, and all of a sudden it puts letters.
Yes, it creates like Greek. You know, software is very smart, except when it's very obtuse, very dumb. Same with robots at work. But I will close this here. Oh, don't need to save it. All right. I've stopped sharing screen. Okay. Do we have any questions from either this audience or the Zoom audience?
You have 13.
Oh, my. Let me take a look here.
I think Gabby's monitoring the questions coming in.
Is there a syllabus available? Actually, I didn't compose one, but if you email me, I can send you the PowerPoint. I can turn it into a PDF. Joining us, having social time. Promise we're not dropping weights in the room. We're excited. Okay.
Most of that's me.
Okay.
So, actually, if you want to send a PDF of the presentation, I'll upload it to our site.
Okay.
And,
I can put some additional comments in the comment section that are on the slides.
Sure.
That will explain what I'm getting at. Yeah. Give me a day to do that, and I can adjust that, and I will send it to you. Now, time-wise, it's 7:48. Any other questions? Let me see if there's any more here. Yes, you have one.
I have a picture of my grandfather. It's like probably a 10 by 12, something like that. But anyway, it was dropped, and part of the glass shattered, and the rest of the glass is stuck to the picture. Now, if I scan that using it like Adobe, can I, if there's a image of the glass where it's cracked, would I be able to scan that?
You should, again, depending on how, because the scanner works with light, you might have to experiment with the scanners, how it sees the image, because it might, depending on the plane of that crack, it could reflect back in an unusual way. But if it does, treat it just like a scratch, just with the erase tool. And
Okay.
if everything is working as it should, you have to try different things.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll be a novice anyway.
That's just me.
so I had a question about slides. My grandfather took a lot of slides,
Yes.
and I know there's definitely some with great value and some hundreds of trees in the Cascades, which
Yes.
you pretty much got one tree in the Cascades, you've got them all.
Unless he was trying to take note of a particular thing about it. With masses of slides, select the ones that you'd like to have done, and that's where I would send it out to somebody who can professionally scan it. We have, and I have looked at a lot of them because I've got mountains of slides yet to be scanned. My uncle, his slide collection he gave me a handful of them, and I was able to make very good pictures, like that one of my dad that has changed color over time. I gave him the one where I brought the color back. And happily, because I still have those slides, they're not going to be lost. But if you have a lot of slides, select the ones you want. Kodak will scan them. They have available scanners that can do it for you, but you can't control the results. It used to be, for example, when we reproduced in the old days before digital age, you'd have to take the housing out from around the slide. That would damage the slide. Now they would put it back again with something of their own, but you lost any information you wrote on the slide. And slides also have to be cleaned without damaging what's on the image. And the older the slide gets, the easier it is, even for a light touch of a brush, to damage the image, make things flake off. Yeah, air, little, which also can drive pieces into corners and things like that, and then extracting them becomes an issue. We know this when we turn over our jets for inspection by the customer, and they have the little pen light looking at every window, see if anything shines back. It means metal shavings that we use to air blow to drive to clean, make it look perfect like a new car, except it drove the shavings under the glass into the other bit. And again,
somebody online
yes,
says they just went to the Family Search Library in Salt Lake City and scanned over 9,000 slides for free.
wonderful that they do that. Again, thank you, Latter-day Saints. That is good. If they'll do that for free, splendid, because you can ask them if you want the end result to be in a raw format, in a TIFF, which is supposed to be the most accurate. What you see is what you get. JPEG, it does things that, I use JPEGs when I want a PowerPoint. I want the file size to be small and manageable.
Sorry, and I misspoke. They didn't do it for her. She had to do it, but it was still doable.
Okay.
Yeah, see, my dad got one of the slide scanners, and that was one of his retirement projects, was doing my grandfather's thousands of slides.
Yes.
Including of trees
Yeah.
in Arkansas
Yes.
and the Ozarks.
But if there's anything written on those slides, on the Ektachrome or Kodak,
Not all of them, but thankfully, this was new enough in time that we've been able to recognize most of them.
now when you've got the image, how do you not lose the digital image? I have a horror story to tell you. While my mother was living, and she still lived down at Auburn, I would bring my laptop and my storage drives, and I had scanned hundreds of our family pictures, and I was going through our slides because I wanted her to tell me who these people were so I could make notes on every one. Since it's in rural Auburn, we just went to lunch. We locked the house. When I came back, the only stuff they took, burglars came in. The only stuff they took was my stuff. There's nothing that mom had they were interested in. My digital projector, because again, I'd throw it up big so that we could see the details and mom could look at it. But they took the storage drives, they all threw it in probably all together, and they were gone. And they probably couldn't do anything with it. We found the not VCR, but the Blu-ray player. They just chucked it out the window as they were going through the stuff. So somewhere decaying are so many family memories, not as much of mom's historic stuff, but from, let's say, 2008 to 2013, I had hundreds of family pictures, video that were on those storage drives. Now I put it all on my drive. With Microsoft, they have G Drive. So as long as we don't have a catastrophic world crisis failure, they should still be accessible both for us and our posterity. My children are very courteous, but they haven't reached of an age where they start wondering, what was it like? We've got loads of video. You can do this with your old video cassettes and have it digitally done. Have it put on a DVD for as long as that format retains its, because Laserdisc has time limits possibly too. That's why it's best to store it in some major way, like on a server. But they don't like it when I show videos of them as infants.
Those bathtub, the bathtub shots just don't make it anymore.
I have a couple that dad, our dogs in the bathtub with me. Or me sitting on an infant-sized crapper, and I've fallen asleep. My dad loved photography. In fact, I still have the old 1950s enlarger of his that probably I could sell on eBay for a pretty penny. But and a lot of his old cameras I still have, back when it was a physical medium. Mind you, I love what digital can do. It's opened all sorts of vistas. Yes.
My old photography club in Texas, before I moved up here, we always said that you need to have it in at least 3 different places. And you want it in at least 2 different formats.
Yes.
I'd say that a hard drive and maybe a DVD backup. So if something happens with one, you still have the other. Storage works very well. And I can pull up on my phone the photos I've got up on the cloud.
On the cloud with me. Flash drives, you don't remove it the right way, you lose everything you've stored on it. It scrambles it. At the moment, they're not able to unscramble it. Maybe future technology could.
You can if you're willing to.
Yeah. Margaret has a horror story about digital. Your hard drive that we got back from a vacation because we hadn't used the computer in a long time, fired it up, and the hard drive died. So we went to great expense to get it extracted, and happily, the one thing they're able to extract was your list of the quilts you'd made and the descriptions. Of all things, thank you. Isidore of Seville is the patron saint of the internet and computers. So thank you, Saint Isidore. He was the guy that created what's considered the first encyclopedia, the first attempt to really classify and organize knowledge. This was back in the 800s. But,
What was the name?
Isidore of Seville. Yeah. You have a question?
Yeah, I have a 8x10 photo of kids playing basketball. We put it on a board for a reunion thing. Thought of one, didn't think much of it. Got kind of heated up and kind of peeled off portions of the thing. Is there any way to restore something like that?
It's a large format picture?
It's, I think it's an 8x10.
Okay.
Yeah.
Get the image, and with the techniques I've shown, get someone who might know Photoshop. I know it a little. My daughter knows it better, but I can certainly, like the image of the Alamo. That poster was in the original, it's minus the corners because of years of my having it up on my wall, and the tacks tear through, so eventually I lost the corners. Well, I just used Photoshop to restore them, and I knew where, the corners are where things usually are not so busy. It's easy to recreate what they were. So if you got damage to it, these are the kind of techniques you use with a scanned image to get it back to what it was.
Yeah, but the film pulled off the back, in other words, there's no picture right there, little spots here and there.
Oh, you mean the whole thing? All that's left is the spots?
No, the whole picture is there.
Yeah, but it has spots in it like,
Quarter of an inch, half an inch.
yeah, that can be restored. Yes, because it takes the information around it. As long as, now if you've got somebody's face there, that it's in the middle of.
There are faces, but I mean, the basic is like the uniform.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to interrupt you for a second. So you guys are you're talking quieter than I can type. Can you kind of repeat what he's saying, because I'm not capturing everything?
The gentleman here has a 8x10 or so photograph that, because it was stuck onto a larger piece so that it could be seen during a reunion In removing it, it also damaged the picture slightly. There are patches of it that are no longer there. And to restore that, use the same techniques that I've mentioned yes,
There's also in Photoshop what's called, if you have a new enough version of Photoshop, content-aware fill.
that's what I'm using, yes.
So you can actually draw the marching dots around.
Yes.
And then you choose that tool, and it interpolates with AI.
Yes.
All the things around it and guesses what's supposed to be there.
Content aware is what it's called, yes. For example, when you've got a panorama and you've not quite aligned it, I could fill in the gaps using that tool that you said. Again, if you really get to know Photoshop.
It also can be used to remove things. So suppose there's some object you don't want in the photo. You draw the marching ants around it and use content aware.
Yeah, the fill.
It fills it in.
Yeah.
What it interpolates. It
Yes.
knows what you think. It thinks what you're trying to remove.
You might have to try it a couple times, redrawing it so you can fool the thing to do the right thing. Again, software is tricky.
We have 8 new messages in the chat.
Okay, 8 new messages in chat.
Most
Whoops.
of those are me.
Okay.
Down
Okay.
at the bottom.
Another tool in photo is content aware fill. Yep, we just were talking about that.
You
I have
also
a-
might mention MyHeritage has an AI tool for restoring photographs that it can actually colorize the image and do some of the dust and scratch removal and healing with their tools. So if you're a member of MyHeritage.com,
Okay. So they do the legwork with the software.
It
Yeah.
has a software-based thing that you just upload the image and tell it to do it. And then you can do edits on top of that, but it will colorize black and white ones. If it's had a color shift, you can fix those.
Yes.
And it's actually
Yeah.
very, very good.
We have one here about a video of people. Let me see if I've got the right one. What slides?
Black and white video.
Of 2 people looking at photos. Screen saving doesn't happen quickly enough to catch a clear image.
Video if it's internet.
If you can get older videos like VHS, for example, or 8mm film, this is where modern AI software can stabilize and enhance images to where you have a much better, won't solve all problems, but people who really know how to use this kind of software can do amazing things, both in colorizing, in timing things. There are several YouTube channels. And by the way, to our listening audience, go on YouTube for photo retouching and photo restoration. They can also point out these same issues and how to solve them. Actually, for Adobe Photoshop, they'll show you exactly, use examples, how to do it, working with layers, for example. But with video, there are YouTube channels of people that what they do is they take historic footage, like 3 months before the San Francisco earthquake, 1906. Somebody took a famous film out the back of a wagon as they drove down a particular street in San Francisco. And the original film is scratchy, jerky, because at the time it was a hand-cranked camera. There is now software that stabilizes it, cleans up the images, restores contrast, then they colorized it. Shockingly, it looks like a video that was shot yesterday. But you notice these people have been dead a long time. You're literally seeing, in a sense, their ghost.
Peter Jackson, the guy that did